Now, the YMCA says that young people are at risk of becoming a lonely lost generation because of dramatic funding cuts to youth services. The charity says since 2010, more than 4,500 youth work jobs have been cut and 750 youth centres have closed. Meanwhile, knife crime has increased and mental health difficulties and isolation amongst young people are still rising. Sky's Noel Phillips has been speaking to people in Lambeth, one of the areas worst affected by the cuts.
From the northwest to the West Midlands to the capital, youth clubs that once attracted thousands of children have had to close their doors following a decade of cuts. In Lambeth, South London, the youth centre which once served this community was shut and demolished last year.
We have no youth club. You know, it's a prime example of there's nothing here. We went from having something that supported young people to having nothing. So the only way that happens is clearly no one cares anymore.
Mark and Timon are youth workers who grew up on the Angel Town estate, an area with a long history of gang violence.
No one feels safe. You know, even when it comes to our youth club, sometimes numbers might not be that high because people are scared to come out of their houses because you never know what's going to happen.
Just 2 streets away, we met 18-year-old Happy.
I've been in situations of where my life has been in danger.
After cuts wiped out his youth club, he was pushed into crime. And while the rise in youth violence is a complex issue, he says there is a link between the two.
In the community I grew up in as well, it was heavily gang affiliated, heavily. So if I didn't have another option, then my life would be like the stereotypical South East London black boy that is growing up in gang violence. So the youth club did help.
With hundreds of youth workers having lost their jobs and dozens of centres closed, this MP is concerned about further cuts.
It's that breaking point. The reality is, if we see any additional cuts to local government funding, I'm quite worried. I'm worried that there'll be a generation of young people who have been forgotten, a generation of young people who haven't been supported.
The report paints a bleak picture here in Lambeth, which has had some of the most severe cuts in the last 10 years. The council has reduced spending by 93%, affecting a lot of these young people. But it's not just happening here. It's a similar pattern across the country.
In 2010 and 2011, £1.4 billion was spent on youth services in England and Wales. But by 2018 to 2019, that amount had fallen to just under £429 million. That's a 70% fall in the amount of money spent.
I think that we are very close to not being able to reinstate youth work. We're losing all the expertise from that area. And to go forward, we're going to need to retrain people.
In a statement, the government has told us next year councils in England will have access to £49.1 billion, the biggest annual real terms increase in spending power in a decade. And we recently announced a £500 million fund that will strengthen youth services across the country. For these young people and many others, they hope this pledge will be delivered. Noel Phillips, Sky News.
It's 6:17, coming up next.